Hi, Mr. Loader here. Wanted to talk to you about the learning for English on Thursday, the 21st of January. The goal is to write the ending of our own picture book stories. Okay. Now, like the other day, I wanted to start off by seeing how we could improve these sentences. So we've been trying to have a bit of a focus, haven't we, each time, and think about what things we should do when we are writing our stories. So we said about capital letters and full stops, powerful language, best adjectives to use, thinking about starting sentences in different ways, and making sure you go into detail. So by thinking about why, where, how, what, maybe when. So I'll read this to you. Jim ate breakfast with the giant. The giant told Jim he couldn't hear. Jim said, "Have you heard of a hearing aid?" The giant said no. Jim said he would get one for him. Okay. So you might want to just think to start off with, how could we improve it? Obviously, couldn't needs to be spelled correctly. Okay, so I don't know if you want to pause the video and have a think. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it and put it onto the next page. So let's have a look at it. Now, the first thing I'd say is Jim ate breakfast with the giant. Now, we could think about what did he eat for breakfast with the giant, okay? So it could be Jim ate cereal and toast for breakfast with the giant. We could add on, couldn't we? To make it a little bit more interesting, we could say something about the toast or something about the cereal. We could say his. I'm just thinking about. I want to say something like the slices of toast were almost as big as him. Now, I know we haven't really talked about this, but because we're saying it with emotion, we could use an exclamation mark for that. The slices of toast were almost as big as him. Now, it kind of links me into the next point. Now I've added that in, it stopped this Jim said, the giant said, Jim said, the giant said, back and forth. Okay, because that can really get repetitive and very boring. So here, look, and I've said about not starting sentences in the same way all the time. So we could say when. So the next bit was the giant told Jim he couldn't hear. So when did he say that? So we could start with whilst they were eating their breakfast, and then I'm going to have a little bit of a pause. The giant said, or the giant told Jim that he couldn't hear that well anymore. So it's really about trying to add in that detail, okay, so the reader understands better, and also it makes it more interesting. Jim said, "Have you heard of a hearing aid?" Now, again, I haven't put this on the things to include, but if that's what he said, you could use speech marks. Okay, so some of you might want to have a go at including those. The giant said no. Now, if he hadn't heard of it, we could say that he was puzzled. So we could say, the giant was puzzled by this and said no. And I want to put that in speech marks because that's what he said. Right, and it finishes with Jim said he would get him one. Could we add anything to that? Jim said he would get. Now, could we change it from Jim to the thoughtful boy? The thoughtful boy said he would get him one. Or if we did said, we could do, I will get you one. So speech marks. I will get you one. Now, just thinking about the start, we could introduce this bit just before Jim ate cereal and toast for breakfast with a giant. We could, couldn't we? As Jim entered the castle, describe the castle. As Jim entered the magnificent castle, he smelt, or he could smell, or no, I like this. As Jim entered the magnificent castle, there was a delicious smell of toast. Okay, and then within that, I'm adding in my adjectives. I'm introducing it, aren't I? Because he's gone then from knocking on the door and the giant answering to then him coming in, and then it rolls in nicely to then him having cereal and toast for breakfast with the giant. Okay, you could add in, couldn't you? The giant asked, "Would you fancy any breakfast?" Okay, on to the ending. Now, remember, like I've just been talking about, we want to put capital letters and full stops, powerful language, what is the best adjective to use, think about different ways to start your sentences, making sure we go into detail. So this is my story map. So this is the ending, isn't it? Okay. So I can see the giant. So we could say, after receiving the walking stick, the giant was delighted. He said, I can now move around, or I can now get around easier. I'm wondering, he shouted instead of said, because I keep on using the word said. What's the next bit? So if I go back, so we've just done that about the giant getting the walking stick and being able to. So do you know what? It's now about the giant being hungry, isn't it? Or now, what happens when our stomach, when we get hungry, our stomach rumbles? So we could say, all of a sudden, the giant's stomach started to rumble. He 3 fried boys on toast. Exclaimed the giant. Okay, so hopefully you can see that I'm again thinking about different sentence starters. I'm making sure I go into detail. Okay, unfortunately, I haven't used any full stop, adjectives yet. So next it would be, we could do, the young boy panicked and ran straight to the top of the beanstalk. He climbed down as soon as he could. He grabbed the sharpest axe he could find and started chopping away at the bottom of the beanstalk. Okay? So remember, you're writing the end of your story. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing them. Take care, Mr. Loader.